When this movie aired on American television, it terrified millions of people. Schools held discussions about it. Families sat in silence after it ended. This was not a flashy Hollywood disaster movie. This was a cold, bleak look at what nuclear war could actually do to ordinary people. Today, we're taking a hard look at the day after from a prepper's perspective, not as entertainment, but as a warning. Welcome to Prepper's Paradigm, your channel dedicated to practical prepping and disaster preparedness. I use a computer-generated voice because my own is difficult to understand due to an injury. In this video, we're reviewing the day after, one of the most influential nuclear war movies ever made. Rather than rating performances or special effects, we're focusing on realism. We'll look at what the movie gets right, what it gets wrong, and what lessons still matter for preppers today. This includes how quickly normal life collapses, how unprepared most people are, and why recovery looks nothing like what movies usually show. This is not about fear or hype. Instead, it's about understanding how fragile modern systems really are and why preparation matters long before anything happens. There's a link in the video description to watch the movie. First, let's take a look at a brief overview of the day after and the context in which it was made. The movie was released in 1983, during a period when Cold War tensions between the United States and the Soviet Union felt very real to everyday Americans. Nuclear war was not a distant or abstract threat at the time. It was something people expected could happen within their lifetime, and that fear shaped how audiences reacted to this movie. Rather than focusing on political leaders or military commanders, the story follows ordinary civilians living in and around Kansas City. Viewers spend time with students, families, medical staff, and farmers as they go about normal life, while international tensions quietly escalate in the background. News broadcasts and radio updates hint that something serious is unfolding, but daily routines continue until events move too fast to ignore. When the nuclear exchange begins, the movie avoids dramatic buildup or heroic framing. The attacks happen suddenly and violently, followed by widespread confusion and destruction. Communications fail, infrastructure collapses, and emergency services are overwhelmed almost immediately. The remainder of the movie focuses on the aftermath rather than the explosions themselves. Hospitals struggle without power or supplies. Food becomes scarce, radiation sickness spreads, and social order begins to unravel. There is no sense that help is coming, and no clear path back to normal life. The day after was never intended as entertainment in the traditional sense. It was created as a warning, showing how nuclear war would affect regular people far removed from decision makers and military targets. That focus on everyday consequences, rather than spectacle, is what continues to make the movie relevant from a prepper's perspective. One of the most accurate aspects of the movie is how quickly events spiral out of control. There is no long warning period where people have time to prepare properly. Information is incomplete, confusing, and often contradictory, which mirrors how real crises tend to unfold. Most people in the movie continue with daily life until the situation becomes unavoidable, which reflects how normalcy bias works in the real world. The movie also gets the immediate collapse of medical services largely right. Hospitals become overwhelmed almost instantly, not just from injuries, but from the sheer volume of people seeking help. Power outages, shortages of trained staff, and a lack of basic supplies turn modern hospitals into places where doctors must make impossible decisions. For preppers, this reinforces a hard truth. In a large-scale disaster, professional medical care may simply not be available when you need it. Another realistic element is the breakdown of infrastructure. Electricity, fuel distribution, communications, and food supply chains fail rapidly, even in areas that are not directly hit by nuclear weapons. The movie shows that secondary effects often cause as much suffering as the initial event. This aligns with what we know about complex systems. Modern life depends on interconnected networks, and once those networks fail, recovery becomes extremely difficult. The portrayal of radiation exposure also feels grounded in its unpredictability. People do not always realize they have been exposed until symptoms begin to appear, and by then it is often too late to do much about it. The movie avoids portraying radiation as something instantly fatal or easily avoided. Instead, it shows long-term illness, confusion, and gradual decline, which matches historical evidence from real nuclear events. Finally, the movie realistically avoids any sense of quick recovery. There is no organized national response that restores order, and no clear timeline for rebuilding. Life after the event is harsher, quieter, and more uncertain. From a prepper's perspective, this may be the most important takeaway. Large-scale disasters do not resolve themselves neatly, and the aftermath is often where survival becomes most difficult. While the movie gets many big-picture elements right, some details reflect the limits of the science and public understanding at the time it was made. One example is how radiation sickness progresses. Symptoms often appear more quickly and more uniformly in the movie than would be expected in reality. In real nuclear events, exposure levels vary widely depending on distance, terrain, weather, and shelter, which leads to very different outcomes for different people. The depiction of fallout also lacks detail. Fallout does not spread evenly across the landscape, and wind direction plays a major role in determining which areas become most dangerous. The movie treats radiation exposure as almost unavoidable for everyone in the region, which can give the impression that survival efforts are pointless. From a prepper's perspective, this is misleading. Understanding fallout patterns and sheltering correctly can make a significant difference. Government and military response is another area that feels simplified. The movie presents authority structures as collapsing almost immediately, with little coordination or communication. While large-scale nuclear war would absolutely overwhelm response systems, some organized activity would likely continue in certain areas for a time. The absence of any functional response serves the movie's warning message, but it may overstate how quickly every system fails everywhere. The movie also gives limited attention to rural self-sufficiency. Although the setting includes farmland, there is little exploration of how food production, storage, or local resources might affect survival outcomes over time. For preppers, this matters. Access to land, skills, and supplies can change the trajectory of survival significantly, even in extreme scenarios. Finally, the long-term environmental consequences are understated. Soil contamination, water safety, and food viability receive little explanation, even though these factors would shape survival for years rather than months. The movie ends before fully grappling with these realities, leaving viewers with an incomplete picture of just how long the consequences would last. One of the clearest lessons from the movie is how little time people have to react once a major crisis begins. Most characters are not ignoring the danger out of recklessness. They are reacting the same way many people do in real life by assuming tomorrow will look like today. For preppers, this reinforces the value of preparation done well in advance, rather than relying on last-minute action once events are already unfolding. The movie also highlights the importance of understanding fallout rather than focusing only on the initial blast. Many of the worst outcomes come not from the explosions themselves, but from exposure afterward, when people move through contaminated areas or fail to shelter effectively. This points to a gap in preparedness that still exists today, where people often underestimate secondary effects and overestimate their ability to simply relocate once danger appears. Medical preparedness stands out as another hard lesson. The movie shows how quickly hospitals become ineffective, even when buildings remain standing. Supplies run out, staff are exhausted, and care standards collapse. Preppers should take this as a reminder that self-care, basic medical knowledge, and realistic expectations about professional help matter far more in large-scale disasters than most people want to admit. Food and water access also emerge as long-term challenges rather than immediate problems. The movie does not focus on stockpiling scenes, but it does show how fragile supply chains are once transportation and power fail. For preppers, this supports the idea that survival is not just about having supplies, but about managing them carefully over time while conditions continue to deteriorate. Finally, the movie underscores the psychological toll of prolonged crisis. Stress, grief, and exhaustion shape decisions just as much as physical hardship. People make mistakes, withdraw, or lose the ability to plan ahead. Preparation is not only about gear and supplies. Mental resilience and realistic expectations play a major role in how well someone copes when normal life disappears. Even though the movie was made more than 40 years ago, many of its core messages remain relevant. Technology has changed, but human behavior has not. The movie captures how people respond to uncertainty, conflicting information, and rapidly escalating events, and those patterns still show up in modern disasters of all kinds. One reason the movie continues to resonate is its restraint. There are no exaggerated villains, no advanced technology that saves the day, and no clear line between safety and danger. Instead, the story shows how fragile normal life becomes when interconnected systems fail. Power, transportation, food distribution, and medical care all depend on stability. And once that stability disappears, even well-developed societies struggle to cope. The movie also stands in contrast to many modern disaster movies, which often focus on spectacle and fast-paced resolution. Recovery in the day after is slow, uncertain, and incomplete. That aligns more closely with real-world disasters, where the aftermath often causes more hardship than the initial event. For preppers, this reinforces the idea that the long tail of a crisis deserves as much attention as the moment it begins. Finally, the movie matters because it forces uncomfortable questions. It challenges the assumption that help will always arrive, that systems will be restored quickly, or that survival automatically leads to recovery. Those are difficult ideas, but they are exactly the kinds of realities preppers need to think about calmly and honestly. The Day After is not an easy movie to watch, and it was never meant to be. It does not offer comfort, solutions, or a sense of closure. What it offers instead is a grounded look at how fragile modern life becomes when systems fail, and how unprepared most people are for events that unfold faster than they expect. From a prepper's perspective, the movie's value is not in predicting exactly how a nuclear war would play out, but in showing the kinds of challenges that emerge when normal life disappears. Confusion, shortages, and long-term hardship shape survival far more than dramatic moments. Those realities apply not just to nuclear scenarios, but to many large-scale disasters. The lesson here is not to panic or fixate on worst-case scenarios. The lesson is to think seriously about time, resources, and expectations. Preparation done calmly and deliberately always beats reaction under pressure. There's a link in the video description to get the movie on Blu-ray, DVD, or Amazon Prime Movies. If you found this breakdown useful, consider liking the video and subscribing to the channel. Let us know in the comments if you've seen The Day After and what stood out to you the most. Thanks for watching Prepper's Paradigm. Stay safe and stay prepared.